So today's episode, this final episode, is going to be pretty different from our usual episodes. We're probably not going to roll any dice or really look at our character sheets or anything like that. We will be maybe making some high-level decisions and calls, and I'll make gut checks on which way things are going to go. But really, I'm just going to run through what probably would have been anywhere from 4 to 8 months worth of games to try to finish out the major storylines that we're still kind of hanging out there. Why doesn't everyone just kind of say hi and check in? Ollie, hello, how you doing?
Hello, I'm doing pretty great. How are you? Considering. Pretty great is relative.
Yeah,
I can work
exactly.
from home. I'm safe. My parents are fully vaccinated. My sister's vaccinated. My husband is vaccinated. Things are going okay. I'm on some waiting lists.
Yeah, that's solid to hear. Yoan, how's stuff going over there?
Not too bad, not too bad. Parents haven't been vaccinated yet, but still trying to track down an appointment there. Yeah, aside from that, things are pretty normal. Child hasn't broken the house. Oh, cat's pregnant.
Oh!
Yeah,
That's
so...
exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the unforeseen things of the pandemic. We had an appointment to have her spayed, but all the spaying clinics shut down.
Oh, sure.
No.
So there will be a rash of cats fairly soon for everyone.
Oh,
Excellent.
Indeed. Indeed. But aside from that, things are just fine. The child doesn't appear to be displaying any kind of mental oddities from being in lockdown for a year, so that's good.
Mm.
Yeah, it feels like there's an age where you get lucky where they haven't known it should be different yet.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty
And
much.
So
with
you
her.
kind of snuck in under the wire on that one.
Just, I think if she'd been a year older, it would have been a different matter entirely, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's good.
And how's stuff rolling with you, Dan?
Actually feeling really ridiculously fortunate, man. I mean, ultimately every day, my dog will visit me at my desk. I get to see my wife for lunch every single day, and I can see right into my backyard. So I'm working, I'm healthy. It's ultimately really, really hard to complain.
I was going to say.
Well, and all of us find us in kind of a luckiest position. I mean, never really talked about, but most of us have the same employer, which have all been made it easy enough for us to work from home. And a podcast, the number one podcast on my list of podcasts is the Freakonomics podcast. And the host on that, Stephen Dubner, since the lockdown, we were talking about things. We would put some stuff in the mid-roll there about charities to look to help and things you could do to help. And one thing he's been driving home that I really like is he signs off every episode with, take care of yourself, and if you can, someone else as well.
Mm.
It is nice to hear that, we're all in situations where we can help people out there because, we're making our fun, goofy little mouse show, and there's some big problems out there that it's nice that if you can help out with stuff like that, go for it. If you can't, don't feel too hard about that.
Yeah, I mean, by all means, practice self-care too, right? Like Dylan said, we are largely incredibly fortunate, but if you're dealing with the day-to-day, that's what you should focus on. Take care of yourself, get your sleep, drink your water, do all that stuff, right? Take care of yourself, because that comes first.
Yeah.
Put your own mask on first, literally. Please keep wearing masks, folks. It's not over yet. Even if you're in Texas. Sorry. Sorry, Texas.
Now, they're not the only ones, although a lot of them, it is nice that a lot of the businesses in Texas are like, nope, still keep it on. So
that's good.
Oh, 100%, man. That's been nice to see.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get some mouse shenanigans rolling. As you may remember, as it's been a long time for us and them, we were actually in the middle of our spooky Halloween episode, which we're not going to finish off. So for those that were wondering exactly how everything at Muscle Logic was going to go down, that'll be a mystery in its own right. Actually, here, think about what you think is going to happen there for 90 seconds. You were right.
We welcome fanfic.
Yeah, write your own ending. We actually have one episode where there was a big problem where one of the audio tracks got exploded. I may release that as some kind of bonus track when we're done if people ask for it. It's rough because someone will say something and then there will be like a minute of silence and then everyone will laugh. So
a little awkward.
Speaking of awkward, I'm cutting in now to point out that I'm recording this and the previous 15 minutes or so 2 months later because I had done the exact same thing that Yoan did. And this space right here in the recording is where I was making fun of him for making this very mistake. So, yeah, karma right now.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's what we're looking at. But in the prime universe of Mouse Adventures, you had all just gotten back to Lockhaven after going on a mission you were told not to go on because people might be out trying to kick your ass, and then a bunch of people kicked your ass.
Weird.
Yeah.
It's like, right, that adventure where I got everybody in trouble.
Your first real mission as leader of the squad, yeah.
Yep. Clearly I can't be trusted. You should not put me in charge.
No one wants to be put in charge is the problem.
Well, you definitely don't want Cledwin in charge. I mean, he's well-meaning, but the entire adventure would end up with everybody in reflective jackets working on the side of the various paths, right? Like doing manual labor all the time because that's what he cares about. I don't know if that's super great adventure material, personally.
But you did get, Chris, the other half of their scout book from old Joel. It wasn't that old, and but you did run into that other faction of that Lena's been rolling around with.
And we didn't recognize any of them, right? I can't remember. It's been a while.
Yeah, no, none of them rung a bell exactly, but
so these were new mice that were trying to kill us.
Yeah.
Joy.
Yeah. But yeah, you had a big smash down bar fight, and everyone's pretty beat up. And you get back, and of course, both Morgan and Duffy are a bit angry. One good thing about this is I'm not going to do a ton of dialogue, so I'm not going to have to pull into my voices, because one thing I was realizing is you're all getting ready now to head up to Port Sumac to head to the Ferret Island. And I suddenly realized as I was getting up to that point, I was like, oh no, how am I going to do like 6 or 7-ish distinctive Southern accents? I don't know that I can do that. Like, how am I going to tell ferrets from each other? So, anyway, my cat is here to say hello to everyone.
Hi, Rudolph.
Basically, after a bunch of admonishing and probably chores and trying to rest up and get healed, because I believe you were all literally injured during the fight.
I think we were, yeah.
And, like, you somehow Hail Mary got out of that fight. But you were going to, begrudgingly be let to go to Port Sumac because, of course, the prince is asking for you specifically. And so away onto Port Sumac you would go. And up at Port Sumac, before you could get on the ship, the big problem that was going on was that there's a deer who has become interested in the east side of Port Sumac where some particularly tasty flowers are growing.
Oh, dear.
And kind of the big thing here is the deer. So it is so much bigger on that animal size chart that this is going to be introducing some of the tactics you need to take on for that. So you have kind of two choices. They ultimately end up being the same roles and difficulties, but it's the theory of how you want to go about it. Either you can use military to form effectively like an anti-large animal phalanx to try to use army versus Godzilla tactics on it to direct it and or try to injure/kill the thing. Or you can use Science Mouse to kind of try to figure out how can you peacefully get it to do a thing that it doesn't exactly want to do right now. So I have a good idea, but where do you think everyone would have landed on which tactic they wanted to take there?
I definitely vote drive it off, don't hurt it.
Despite the fact that Cledwin has kind of made a point of making these trophies for things like the snake and Swarnaw's tooth and things like that, we've had some success with combat. I mean, it's not big organized combat. I don't think anybody in the group is really specialized in that. In a brawl, we do fine, right? But really, when it comes to the big stuff, we have leaned more towards science. All of us have kind of picked up a few skills in that area. Some of the overarching missions have really involved things like that with essentially even napalm and things like that, right? So we've had the experience applying the scent border and even using some of that stuff in unique ways. So, I mean, I really think that we, as a group, would lean towards a science solution there.
How's that sit with Cahill?
Yeah, I mean, no violence, I guess. It's a big thing. It's a big thing. We should probably attempt to outsmart it rather than out-thump it.
Yeah. You don't want to make the deer angry.
No.
So, yeah. So eventually the deer would get driven off, but the important thing is that you would have learned the importance of dealing with large animals, which would have been important for the Season 2 finale, which we'll get to eventually today.
Okay.
The other thing that would have been a slight problem is that basically everyone is here. The ship is set up. Everyone's real excited. Prince Rilbon talks like this about a whole bunch of things. And
I love it.
He had actually set up a little shack off to the edge of town where he could kind of go hunting and stuff and not be, effectively this 20-foot tall person in the middle of town all the time.
I was going to say, you say little.
Yeah, little for him. So he's ready to get going. The big issue is that Captain Opita is actually late. She was supposed to be coming up from Grass Lake there, and no one has seen her, and last they heard, she was supposed to be heading up this direction, but she's kind of gotten missing.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no. I mean, that's actually really out of character for her, right? I mean, she's the one who was really pissed off when we were late. So, yeah, I mean, that would definitely worry Cledwin. I'm not sure what we'd be able to do in terms of, like, a scouting party.
Is there anything that people would want to put together on that?
I mean, I'm certainly worried about her. I don't know if we can get any messages back and forth, go scouting, try and figure out what the heck happened to her. Maybe keep Cahill out of it.
Corvids in general would be good, yes.
Yeah, I mean, in general, those are normal access and not, as far as you know, there's none at Port Sumac.
Yeah. I mean, she is our captain, so she's kind of, vital to this whole northern voyage. I think we have to go after her. I mean, if there's nobody to drive the boat, then...
Yeah, getting the voyage delayed isn't too bad.
Oh, that's true.
The guy who originally stole the Merope to go find it, he's going to... His plan is to be the co-captain, sub-captain, first mate, whatever, Riker, on this mission. It's been surprising that there's plenty of people who don't want to go on this.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of people who do, and you basically technically have that ship fully crewed, but it takes more crew than a normal ship because it is bigger, because it's enormous, made to accommodate some of the larger folk. So yeah, it's a big ship. It's probably the biggest ship that known mouse kind has ever put together, and is built kind of funky. They had to do a lot of tests and stuff to see how buoyancy was going to work with basically the back end of it a little larger, and stuff's been redistributed, plans, they've made models, all that stuff. So yeah, so you head out, and eventually you back down on the road about a day out, you actually find her with Captain Barry, who had taken over the Goliath Beetle from her during her retirement. And
I remember Captain Barry.
Yeah. I believe Cledwin remembers Captain Barry.
Cledwin, whose voice suddenly became about half an octave deeper when hanging out with Captain Barry.
So we've got we find Captain Opita and Captain Barry. I'm sure Cledwin remembers Captain Barry.
Oh yes. Yes. I remember Captain Barry.
Captain Opita is in what effectively is a wheelchair.
Oh dear.
Oh.
And she took a bit of a tumble about a few weeks ago, and they managed to get this together. And
don't you say it, Tahoe.
She is running the thing herself, but Captain Barry is there every once in a while just to help her with her stuff, and to give her a push every once in a while when the road gets rough, because they're not exactly paved or anything.
No,
but she's getting along just fine in her chair, and she gives you some homespun insults about how she's not going to let this keep her from going on the biggest sailing adventure that that she's ever seen.
Excellent. How accessible is the boat?
Well, and that's the next thing. When you get there, you're going to spend a day making a few adjustments to the ship to make it more rampy and stuff like that. One thing that she works on specifically is getting some effectively clamps at the helm that she can wheel into and then clamp the chair down.
Nice.
And so that because the boats are rocking, so being able to clamp in there works for her.
Well, and plus, I mean, just a nice block and tackle system with a platform that you use for big crates. I mean, you could end up actually being elevated over the deck in a chair like that and get a better view on what's going on.
Yeah, theoretically, if you wanted to do something like that. So that's maybe make some adjustments to that as well. And
reflects this is new engineering knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, this would be like shipwright and engineering, that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Clevin would have been able to use his engineering wise.
Right, exactly. So, we get the ship hooked up with a bunch of stuff, and, after a few days, and probably 5-ish episodes, we push off to the north. The trip to the north is in the height of summer, so there isn't a lot going on
We've seen this before. We're invading the north in the summer. This can only go terribly wrong.
Oh, and I apologize, Cahill. I forgot an incredible key component. When we get on board, Captain Opita does pull out the cabin boy uniform that she had prepared for you, which is it's funny, most of the time mice don't wear anything, but somehow the short shorts are more revealing than you not wearing anything.
That's right, that was her condition of coming on the boat in the first place.
Yes.
I hate that.
You have a very adorable hat that replaces your current hat.
I like my hat, though.
It has a nice little ribbon down one side of it.
We welcome fan art.
This is ridiculous.
And basically, you are at her beck and call for this voyage and any return voyage.
Jolly good.
And the rest of us are definitely not going to give you hell about this at all.
No, not at all. In fact, Constance even chimes into you.
Not. Oh, yes.
Yes, she chimes into Rowan about exactly how ridiculous he looks and how he deserves every minute of it.
Wonderful.
So, even the dead are here to make fun of you. Captain Barry does return back to Grass Lake because someone's got to run the Goliath beetle.
Of course.
And no one else is mighty enough to do such a deed.
What? The little lady was mighty enough.
She's the only one that Captain Barry's scared of, probably.
I love it.
And you start heading up north. There's a couple stops at the other cities along there. You actually make a stop at Caligaro before you head off to the because it is to the northwest a bit.
Oh yeah.
And so you take off. And the biggest things that you're running into is there's a decent amount of rain off and on. But for the most part, your sailing seems to be pretty pleasant. Chris is able to finally kind of weave together the rest of the Scout notebook. One morning, as you're headed up there, someone up in the crow's nest calls out that they see a crow or something like that.
Oh, from ahead of us or behind us?
From behind you.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh.
Okay, maybe it's Cinder.
I mean, let's hope.
Yeah, and
a crow could mess up a boat even this size.
Yeah, I mean, like this boat, the crow's probably a third of the size of the boat or so.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the crow comes
not
by.
Built for a water landing.
Yeah. They've got spyglasses and such, and eventually you're able to figure out that it is Lena on the crow. And she comes in and basically flips on the crow VTOL and is hovering along with you pretty closely and starts shouting that the ferrets are not to be trusted and that this mission is crazy and you should turn around And what are you even doing up here? And it's completely insane that you're trying to get up here at all. Like, they're gonna kill us all if you get a chance.
This is Lana saying this.
Yeah.
Okay. So someone who we, actively distrust probably the most of anyone we've met in the entire game, possibly including the fox, is telling us that the ferrets are not to be trusted.
I mean, the fox was always honest about its intentions.
That's true, actually. She was very straightforwardly going to eat us all.
Yeah. I'm going to eat all of you. I believe her.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I mean, ignore the troll and it'll go away? That's kind of my instinct.
Yeah. And eventually she pulls the bird up and continues on basically in the same direction you're going, but much faster.
Oh, no.
Interesting.
Okay.
And then there's, you would be in summer. I'd roll against the summer table a bunch and throw some random weather bullshit at you. Probably at some point, a large fish,
Yay.
maybe a rainbow trout of some kind would ride alongside the ship, kind of doing like the dolphin thing.
Perfect.
Flying alongside the ship for a while. But without too much... I imagine too much sadness or critical stuff, you finally make it up to the island.
Yay!
And you dock there, and there is a dock of some kind, although it isn't nearly as put together as it's much bigger, but it doesn't seem to be quite as advanced or as in use as like the Port Sumac dock or any of the naval ports that you see. It looks kind of, well, we've got a dock in case a boat needs to land here, but we don't do like major trading or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple ferrets milling about down there, and they're surprised and intrigued as the ship starts to get up. And the prince jumps up on the deck of the ship and gives a wave to everyone, and people are like, oh my god, he's still alive, he came back, this is great. He's brought us a ship full of food.
and
he's like, no,
friends, not food.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of discussion about that. These aren't voles. We pretty much stick to voles and like rabbits at this point. Remember, these are all too small. And they're friends and allies. And one of them says, well, the other ones that have been coming up here seem to think that they're not to be trusted. And kind of the big end here would be that you would get back to they have kind of like not really like a castle, but kind of like a longhouse, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It looks like Edoras.
Yeah, exactly. So you get up to like that longhouse area where all the, ferrets do have royalty, to where like the ferret royalty is. I mean, you're with a prince.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, I'll go in and talk to Dad, see what we can get going. Is there anything that anyone would be wanting to do, investigate, etc., as you first are landing on this ferret island?
Well, way before that, like after Lana cruised off, like we'd have to sit the prince down and give some backstory on that whole situation.
Sure. Yeah, so you fill him in on all that.
The first is that we can expect that if she gets to the north before us, she's going to stir up some stuff, and we should be prepared for that. Because she's dangerous, he says, rubbing his shoulder.
Yeah, don't let the paisley fool you.
Yeah, don't. Mm-mm.
It is fated.
So we do that, and then I guess we'd be looking out for anybody that wasn't overly surprised at our landing, right? I mean, that would be the giveaway.
Well, I mean, people are more excited than surprised. The prince did say he would be coming back. He was going to go hang out with the mice for a year, come back with tidings and presents. Oh, that's the other thing. There's a ton of presents and crafts that came around from all the mouse territories that were loaded onto the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a ton of cultural exchange and foods and stuff, and a lot of them are tried to scale up to be big. It's like,
oh gosh, yeah.
What if we make this pie the size of 4 pies? kind of thing. So there's a lot of that kind of thing that happens. Some gifts and stuff. There's a ton of communications that you have been given from Lockhaven in terms of scrolls and stuff. I don't know that it's ever been in. We have kind of determined that you found weasel writing and you could read it. That there's effectively the talking animals have a common effectively that they can speak and read and write in.
Yeah, that makes sense. We can understand when the weasels speak.
Yeah.
They just have funny accents.
Right. Same with the ferrets. So, yeah, you've got some communications from Morgan and such. And so you get up there and finally get, there's going to be a time set up where you'll get to talk to the king and his court about what's been going on. And the kind of big smash ending of this chapter is going to be you go into the room and, these doors are big for the prince. So for you lot, it's these massive doors and you go into this giant hall with the table and the king is at one end and there's a bunch of ferrets at the table. And the king says, finally the other delegation has arrived. And over on the other side, you see 4 weasels sitting at the table.
Figured.
Along with Lena.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy.
No. And so now the next chunk of this was going to be negotiations and diplomacy, where Team Ferret is trying to convince, or Team Weasel is trying to convince the ferrets that all is forgiven and they should come back to the mainland, and they will give them a large chunk of land that they call the East Heather, which is basically like the western half up to and including Lockhaven of the Mouse territories.
I see.
There's still a lot of ferrets that remember that the weasels are the one that banished them up here in the first place. But effectively, it sounds like Lena is saying that as one of the only trustworthy mice, they need to pair up with their weasel friends. It sounds like she's trying to push them into like open war effectively with the mice.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like the obvious counter there is, just pointing out that they're being used, right? They haven't been able to move us, so they want you to do the dirty work. Why trust somebody who's betrayed you when we've got this fresh new relationship? Right?
Yeah.
Also, do you remember your friend Dania from the Battle of Appleloft? This one's been trying to kill her for 15 years for working with you.
So turn the weasels against her.
And well, she's like, I've been talking with Dania, and she's happy to continue to help the weasels take their ancestral homelands that they've been kicked out of unfairly. She cries a little bit. So I would like to ask each of you if there's any effectively like auxiliary things that you would like to do during the non-negotiation time. Right now, everyone is told that there's to be no fighting, that any fighting will be dealt with swiftly and lethally by the town guard.
No assassinations, Lena.
What's the town like? I mean,
they're completely isolated. There's basically one major settlement up here, which is probably as big as the biggest towns in the Mouse territories, but ferret scaled, and probably even like a little bigger than that. And then there's a couple like very small, like effectively the equivalent of like small logging camps and hunting camps that are dotted out throughout the rest of the island. And in fact, the prince offers to take you a tour at one point because this is going to be days and days and days. So if you want to go check out any of that stuff, you can go do that. But it's a fairly, you wouldn't consider it like backwater or like advanced. It feels like it's like if we went to like Berlin or something.
Right.
So no real opportunities to do like knowledge sharing or like point out some like engineering advances or something like that.
I wouldn't say that it's impossible, but it's not. You're not like at a caveman town, right? You're not going to be like fire, right? So you could probably, there's certainly, it's literally impossible for cultures to be separated this long with no communication, and there not to be some divergent development. So I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's not going to be anything like revolutionary. But it could be certainly evolutionary, or there could be some big advancements there, but not. Holy cow! The block and tackle.
Yeah, I mean, no, because clearly, I mean, the prince wasn't like overawed by our shipbuilding, right? He had to help us learn how to do their shipbuilding.
Yeah.
But like, if there was an opportunity to be useful or provide some knowledge, basically prove that we're good allies, right?
Sure.
That's the name of the game for Cledwin.
Okay.
Yeah. Similarly, Rowan would want to meet with the ferret's medic and see what she can learn from them and what they can learn from her.
Okay, this is exciting. I was hoping that something would get to this naturally. The ferret medic, when you come in, there's actually kind of a weird nervous hush kind of goes over the medical area where the chief medical officer, advisor of the king. And it turns out that, and Chris would probably go with you, with whoever they are at the time. It turns out that, what's the timeline? I think it's pushing 100 to 150 years at this point. The first mice that had made their way up here via bird had come up, and one of them was a mighty warrior that called themselves the Black Axe.
Oh, there we go.
That's
right.
There it is.
The other one was, were there 3 total? Boy, I'm forgetting.
I think there were just 2. I think it was just the Black Axe and the one who could talk to birds.
Yeah, and so, well, the Black Axe actually ended up doing them a great favor and helped defeat a fox that had been terrorizing them for a while to prove his might and his worthiness. The old medical officer at the time was fascinated and intrigued by the mice. And not from a place of malice, but overwhelming curiosity, killed the other mouse and did an autopsy on her so he could understand their anatomy. And that...
I think the prince actually was upfront about this when we first met him.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, he talked to, I don't think he got as much into the specifics.
Yeah.
No, but they had encountered mice and that one had come to a bad end, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And so basically there's kind of like a mural that depicts part of this, and effectively like the mouse is almost like risen to like a saint among their medical community, because the ferret was imprisoned, and I'm not even sure. I don't think that the comic that takes place there gives a canonical final, and he may have even been executed.
I think he was executed immediately.
Summarily physically attacked, right?
Yeah. So he was swiftly and immediately taken care of, and that's what happened. That's what happened there. But now the medical mice or medical ferrets are almost like, it's a combination of shame and it's like you're a Fabergé egg, right? They don't want to get close to you. They don't want to touch you. They don't want to do anything. They almost never even make direct eye contact with you.
Oh, wow.
Because they're just they understand what they did was what happened with their predecessor was very wrong, and they want to make up for it. And as you start working with them, and they get over this situation, and I mean, it's tough. There's it's tons of apologies and stuff. That every time they're asking things that could be differences in the anatomy, it's almost tough for them to choke out the words and stuff. But eventually you do start finding out some things that they've discovered medicine wise, and that you've discovered and stuff, herbs and poultices and other effects and stuff like that. But you actually start building that together, and you get a pretty solid ally out of the medical crew.
Nice.
Cahill, what are you going to be doing?
I mean, there's not a whole lot specific, but I guess just poking around in general and see if I can get a kind of general idea about how the place works, what their society is actually like.
It's very feudal. Yep, there's the there's the royalty, and there's the peasantry, and there's a lot of toiling of fields and such like that. But he's one of the nice kings kind of thing, where, he does take good care of his people. And I was even going to do I can't remember exactly who it was, but there was the feudal lord that did the potato troll, where there was the peasants didn't like potatoes, even though they were this cheap and easy to grow crop. So he made Ye Royal Potato Farm and put guards around it and said no one could come in and get the potatoes. And then everyone started sneaking in and stealing potatoes. And he told the guards just to ignore people when they did it.
That's delightful.
Right, so I was gonna do a riff on that, where he had some crop, maybe it even would be potatoes, and so everyone then starts growing their own clandestine potato gardens and stuff. They're like, it's I believe it's the origin of the secret ingredient is crime. Where he basically tricked them into thinking potatoes were the best. So but obviously it's still a serfdom setup, so being the peasants aren't the best. But they're not abjectly, directly cruelly taken care of. But one thing that you start to find out is that Lena and occasionally some other mice have been making trips up here for almost a year straight now.
What?
And that the first ferret return was early spring, basically as soon as the thaw happened. The first weasels came up from the mainland in early spring as soon as the first thaw happened. So they've actually been trying to make diplomatic inroads for a while now. Basically, the night before, the big vote is going to happen, Lena approaches wherever you're staying and says, look, if we can do this, I think that we can get Morgan to authorize, if we go to outright war with these, Morgan will authorize stuff, and I've been stealing so much heather fire from these people that we can wipe all of them off the planet forever, and we can expand the mouse territories to a size that we've never seen possible before. So I think that the best thing that you can do is chip in with me to try to help the weasels and the ferrets to get going again, so that we can get rid of this menace that is always at our door, kind of thing, is her push.
Wow. I think the biggest trick there is probably saying no in a way that doesn't get us killed on the spot.
As far as you can tell, she's alone, but there are definitely other mice that you see up here that aren't part of your team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
But she really lays it out and says that those maps you found, it's that was going to be a 30-year plan, but I think we can do it in 6 months if we get the right push.
And I just keep thinking, and I think it was actually Lena's belief or something from the Appleloft episodes that honor has no value against an honorless foe.
Yep.
Right.
I can't imagine trusting her enough to work with her.
Well, and here's Cledwin's thing, right? War against the weasels is bad enough, but betraying the ferrets is just a non-starter, right?
Yeah.
For Cledwin, that's just no bueno.
Well, the day comes and the negotiations start to happen, and the ferrets basically lead in with, now that we see what you've done up here and we see this island, you're welcome to come back and join us, and this is what we'll do, but know that if you don't, the advancements you've made and your friendliness with the mice means that we'll probably, if you're not with us, that we're going to come up here and wipe out your little island, is kind of their overall position.
The weasels?
The weasels' position.
Delightful.
The mice are actually nowhere, the other mice are actually nowhere to be found at this point during the final negotiations. When you come in, you're bringing in, and as the mouse guard does without even really any prodding from me, you've got allies from the medical department, you've got some of the builders and engineers who come in talking about how you've helped, and some of the peasantry come in to talk about Cahill talking to them about what they've been doing and what's been going on down there, and how it's, these people all seem to be genuinely trying to help, And so, effectively, that would give you a bunch of bonus dice and/or successes
Yay!
on this big ol' roll. And I mean,
Great big social combat.
Yeah, exactly. And depending exactly on what your plan was, and if you thought that Lena was, I kind of put it at like a 75-25 that you would end up coming out on the positive side here. I was ready to go either direction. Like, who knows? Maybe you think getting rid of all the weasels is the way to go, and that's what to do with it. And so I was. If you wanted to, I was ready for all-out Weasel War 2. But
oh goodness, I feel I can state with confidence that the mouse guard does not support genocide.
Yeah,
right? Probably.
Even of people who are trying to kill us.
There's just so much work in genocide.
I will say that, like, you know, the conversation with Cinder would have to be, look, Lena's got a plan to end the weasel threat. If we decide to take the gloves off on the weasel front, you know, she's probably prepped to do that, but you got to be real careful because she was willing to, you know, betray an entire other people's to make it happen.
Yeah, and, like, who knows what the both sides' death toll would even be in that. And who's to say that Lena's plan works 100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, that's the thing with Heatherfire. It's real hard to control.
Yep.
So it sounds like cooler heads are going to prevail here. The weasels
for now
run off to their boat with a bunch of odd miscellaneous threats. And there's a party. Yay! Lots of fun stuff happens. Weasels, ferrets and mice are friends forever. Friends forever.
Yay.
Friends forever. And before too long, one of them comes out and says that they're running into an issue out at one of the hunting camps, and it seems that some of the foxes are starting to encroach in on them again.
Oh, no.
And so they look to you. It's like, your kind has been able to help in the past. We know that last time it was a show of force to gain our trust against impossible odds. This time we would like to go with you as allies. And kind of a hunting party is put together. Chris says, well, we'll get something ready in the morning. And in the morning, Chris has taken the bottom out of their giant truck where they keep their big black axe.
What?
Chris hasn't even known that they've been the Black Axe this whole time because they were really just holding it. Now that you've got the scout book, and some of you had even guessed this in some level or another, or even complete jokes. I mean, it's not impossible given that you knew that Chris was the Black Axe's scout back in the day.
Right, yeah, that was Rhodey had that connection to the Battle of Apollon, so I figured the Black Axe would, like, there was a possibility that they would show up at some point. No idea it would be the same person.
No, completely shocked.
So the old Black Axe was old Joel.
What?
And gave everything to Rhodey to hold on until his son was of age to take stuff over. But then the scout sheet with all that information got blowed up. And now that the scout one has been put back together, Chris knows that Chris can be the Black Axe when they need to. But now they know that their goal is to go find young old Joel and turn them into the new Black Axe.
Oh, man.
So you go out on your anti-Fox party. Your old pal, the Black Axe, is very helpful in this combat.
Man,
they're effectively
younger, healthier foxes is going to be just crazy, much more dangerous.
Yeah. But you know, it's tough. Some people probably get injured, but overall you prevail, and the might of the Black Axe is once again cheered on.
Man, a new set of brooches are made.
Exactly. you like grab a bunch of their toes or something this time.
Clyde would always insist on butchering our foes.
It was
turning them into jewelry.
Just a tooth. or talons.
Yeah.
Body parts.
Everyone gets a gallbladder to hang around their neck.
Hey, now we've got matching fox brooches, right? Like one for either side of our cloak.
Right.
Give some to the ferrets.
Mm-hmm. To commemorate a successful shared hunt.
Yes, this cements in the relationship between the mice, and when you eventually get on the ship, it's time to go back. Everyone cheers. There's a bunch of goods loaded into the world's most powerful cargo ship now. The prince is going to stay on the island, but he sends forth his younger brother and younger sister to kind of be emissaries for now, and to have like an official, what's the thing that...
Embassy?
Ambassador?
Yes, embassy, yes. And ambassador, yes. Those are the two forms of the word I'm looking for.
Those things.
There's
That's
an
my
embassy,
word, dog.
There's an embassy suite set up, which is nice.
Ferret size.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and so trade relations start opening up, and one of the few things I haven't been saying much about Acorn, but Acorn's kind of last thing in these trade negotiations that he pipes up is he starts talking to them about how great a universal currency would be. And he just happens to have one on him that has been doing well in the mouse territories. And they're just like, well, I guess it doesn't seem to make any sense. We've really just been like a trade and feudal system. It's like, no, don't worry, we got it figured out. So
with the amazing new Orlandos.
Yeah,
exactly.
These are taken anywhere.
Yes. Anywhere that barter is sold. All right, so...
As long as we stick to the Orlando standard, we'll be great.
Yes. Everyone has one Orlando in their vault for each coin. Is there anything else you want to do on Ferret Island before you come back?
If we were able to do some knowledge sharing...
Yeah, is there any market we can corner or anything?
Well,
can you build a pub up here?
They do have some their own unique spins on spirits up here.
Marvelous. Cultural exchange carries on.
They're excited to learn about the assorted brews and stuff that you make.
At CNC's boozing factory.
Exactly.
Oh my god, Cahill just figured out a way to create that stuff on such greater volume per batch.
Oh yeah.
What if I had ferret scale people making these things?
Indeed.
Ferret scale equipment, mass production.
It comes in pints.
Of course, there's a big drop in employment in Port Sumac as all the brewing gets offshored.
Right.
Well, that's just your you're really kind of like high end. What's the word I'm looking for?
Oh, the imports kind of things, the top shelf.
Well, the local craft scene is really just unique, right? The mouse crafted.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you've got your mouse stuff, which is of course the microbrew.
Yes,
and then then there's Ferret Reserve.
Very good.
That's exactly it.
Which is the top shelf stuff, and all the bottles are oversized.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right, it's like those giant bottles of Grey Goose.
Yeah. It's the whole comes in pints conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
What's that? Pint?
Comes in pints? All right, and you head back with the Ferret ambassadors and stuff gets set up. When you get back, you're finally caught up on the news, and the weasels left well before you and had a shorter path to go. And so there's been a bunch of weasel drumming up on the west edge of mouse territories again.
Mm-hmm.
You get Captain Opita sent back to, I just said it a minute ago,
Grass Lake.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
She gets back. She loved her time up there and has said that she actually plans to go pack up and take one more sail and actually live up there. And because there's plan to put together some kind of mouse ambassadorship up there as well, and she's for it.
We ought to consider some sort of navy. I don't know how we combat the bird problem, but we're going to need to protect that waterway now.
Yeah, and so that starts getting talked about. Duffy is sad that he didn't get to go on this mission, but now that it's set up, he's actually talking about maybe he'll retire up in that area as well.
Oh my!
You'd love it, Duffy.
It's a place that he looks like he'd really like. Then there's a couple pretty boring, normal adventures that I had plotted out to get stuff figured out back in the other areas. There's occasional fox incursion on the east side. I was going to have Wilhelm come and do another guest session with Sarnaugh being a jerk over on the east coast, east border. And eventually, without too much trouble, we were going to roll into winter with Orlando's starting to spread everywhere, regular trade opening up with the ferrets, ambassador ships and stuff getting risen up, and kind of the end of the last winter session would be a small weasel incursion in the northeast. And I don't know, this was barely mentioned, and I don't know how much you paid attention to it, but do you remember a note you found when you were in the Dark Heather about BF1?
You mentioned that on Twitter, and it rung no bells at all. You mentioned something about BF1 on Twitter when you were talking about doing a wrap-up episode, and I was looking at that going, BF1, what on earth? So no, I do not remember at all.
No, man.
When you were finding all this stuff about like the honey shock and all the stuff that they were using honey for, there was a note that indicated that the majority of the volume of the honey was being put off for BF1. And I'm not going to say that the entire reason that I ran this 3.5-year game was for this pun.
Oh, no.
But in the spring, the weasels unleash their newest weapon, Bear Force 1.
Oh, no.
Of course.
Oh, no.
Honey for the bear.
No.
The weasels have stolen a cub. They have been training it with honey. They stole a bear cub. They've been training it with honey, and they have a mobile attack platform.
Wait, let's think this through, though.
Bear Force 1.
How quickly do cubs grow? How long before this thing is completely uncontrollable by them?
I mean, that's not their concern right now.
Well,
this
is my point. They grow very fast. It'll be their concern in a couple of weeks.
Have you never seen Gentle Ben? If you raise a bear from a cub, he'll be your friend.
I'm afraid that's just a fallacy.
Also, what if he was on our side?
You tell that to Siegfried and Roy.
Also the owner of Gentle Ben.
Oh, really?
No, I don't know.
No, yeah, the last episode they couldn't show because he ate the dude. So there was going to be some major, large-scale combat, and since you knew how to deal with the deer, that's the whole reason that we had the deer set up, was so that you would then be able to deal with Bear Force 1. And so, again, you have two options for dealing with Bear Force 1.
So basically, we've gone to Mouse Kaiju at this stage.
Kind of.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
But it has a bunch of, ferret allies, or weasel allies.
Yeah.
You do get some ferrets to come over and help out with the Bear Force 1 situation.
Yeah. Unfortunately, even if we befriended the deer, let it grow into a stag, and then pitted it against the bear, we've got a...
Oh, no, I didn't even think of that.
I think the carnivore still wins in that situation.
I think they do.
We could Pacific
I charmed a whistle pig. I don't know that I could charm a bear.
Oh, I forgot. There was going to be an incredible... Wait, this is Rowan? When you got up to the Ferret Islands, and one of the medical crew was going to have this thing preserved, which was obviously like half a squirrel. and they were going to be claiming that this was half of the whistle pig that you had destroyed that had flown up to their island.
Delightful.
I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Yes. Yeah, and so there was going to be all these people. It's like your whistle pig is up here. You're going to be like, what are you talking about?
The whistle pig that I punted all the way to the Ebon Islands.
Exactly. Yeah, and so you'd eventually have to I don't know if you let them go on with their story that's your whistle pig. Or
I often do because it's more fun that way.
I didn't get a good look at it, so that could be it.
Oh, man.
And yeah, so that was really going to be the end of season 2 was going to be the beginning of Big Weasel Incursion and Bear Force 1. And so you were going to have kind of a couple major paths, and this is where stuff starts to be like so many decisions could be going that there's now like 8 to 15 tree stems that could be coming off the plot at this point that I don't have anything super specific. But basically your major plans again would be to try to raise an army to kill / disable / permanently drive off this bear cub, or try to science it in some way to, use less punchy means to get this bear to quit doing what they're doing.
Yeah. And I mean, if we use science for the deer, we'd probably use science now. I mean...
Release
the thing about the deer is the deer isn't trying to, like, eat you.
Yeah.
And so it makes it a bit easier to science it.
Yeah.
But there again,
well, I mean, on the other hand, the bear is driven by its stomach, and they're not the only ones with honey.
Well, that's the other thing. The bear is not likely to be trying to eat the mice either, for the bear is not a natural predator of the mouse.
I mean, it probably wouldn't pass one up, but...
Yeah, I mean, they're small and fiddly. It'll be rampaging, but...
The bear had heard that there's some pretty large trout-based ones.
Right.
That are pretty famous over in this area.
Fine.
Can we distract him with salmon?
I just want to see, like, you all try to, like, carry, like, a salmon. Like, effectively, like, trying to carry,
We have
like...
ferret friends now.
Trying to carry a giant, like, swordfish or something.
Who'd have thought a whale would be so heavy?
But overall, that's basically how far out I had really had stuff planned together. Was
counter the honeypot offensive with the trout counteroffensive.
Yeah, exactly. There was like you could try to fight the bear. Like a couple different science ideas I had that you could paths that you could go down would be like, try to find the bear's mom and get it out of there.
And take her on the weasels for messing with your cub.
Yeah, exactly. Try to convince the bear that the Faraday's friends, destroy honey supplies. If they run out of honey, then suddenly they're not gonna, you could do like some kind of clandestine mission, probably grabbing Dania to go back into the Dark Heather and take out their honey reserves and stuff like that.
We would have to find her first, but yeah.
Sure.
Which I kind of want to do anyway, because I want to talk to her about, like, Lena's obviously full of BS, but I'd like to hear that from Dania.
Well, and
there's no chance Lena and Dania were working together on this weasel genocide thing. Like, that's zero possibility.
Lena had talked to Dania, like, under duress and gotten her to, gotten some information out of her that, nothing that Lena said was, like, an outright lie. But it wasn't mostly true either. So that really kind of wraps up everything. I mean, again, that's, that was probably a year plus worth of story and games at that point, given the speed that we tend to go through stuff. So that was about how far that I had everything blocked out. So at this point, I guess it's like the mega cheese chat. Everything is on the table. Any question anyone wants to ask about anything, about how things could go different ways, about stuff we never got to, anything, go ahead and let me know. What do you want to know that you don't know about the What You Fight For campaign?
So I do just want to read out one. I typed up a couple of questions, and you answered this one so amazingly perfectly, but I want to read it to you because you completely read my mind. Once we put Rhodey back together, were there plans to have the Black Axe be part of our story?
Yes.
I love it. So great.
Yeah, so there would be, one thing that you probably want to do with this Weasel War is go up and get young old Joel to figure out who he is and what his legacy is. He's never been much of a fighter. He never really knew his dad. And so, there'd be a lot of, like, probably Rhodey teaching Joel what he needs to do to become the Black Axe.
Right. And I mean, like, whether or not he's even interested, right? I mean, that is a hell of a calling.
Yeah, he definitely would have been like a little bit of your reluctant hero, but I think that once he got the lowdown, he wasn't going to be like, ultimately getting him on board wasn't going to be a big challenge.
Yeah.
The bigger challenge is going to be like training this doofus that's been like living up in his little house for the past 20 years.
Right. But hey, I mean, to that end, the Trout Squad could have been really good friends to a person who needed to learn that stuff.
Yeah, and that's one thing, right? Like the Black Axe in general tries to make sure that as few people know who they are as possible.
Well, including the Black Axe, really.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes the Black Axe doesn't know who the Black Axe is.
Chris is kind of an unusual case. They don't really know who they are on any given day.
Yeah. And to that, I think I talked about this a little bit, but Chris and Constance's ghost and stuff like that, those are me trying to like add a little bit of like slightly extraordinary stuff, right? This isn't a wizard and magic game. This isn't this is not a spaceship and alien game. And so, I wanted to keep everything, quote, low tech and low fantasy, right? So I didn't want to be like, and aliens land or anything like that, right? I didn't want to do anything too out of form from that. But I was trying to get like some, interesting things that like you really wouldn't expect into the game.
Mm-hmm.
And those were that. I had like 2 or 3 nebulous long games with Constance, but like I did always want to get Rowan/Holly's opinion on what she thought was going on.
Yeah, I don't know. Which is, I'm sure, a very unsatisfying answer.
No, that's fine.
I was wondering if there was ever if there would ever be a chance for Rowan to, like, it's cliche, but like help Constance move on, right? Because obviously she's still hanging around, and there's a reason for that, and we never really found out what that was.
Yeah, that was something that I had kind of kicked around, but I didn't have a good reason for her. I had always really based it on Rowan's insane, like, guilt over the situation more than anything that Constance had done.
Sure.
Right.
Like,
so maybe if Rowan goes to therapy, then Constance goes away.
Yeah, that, like, even maybe that's possible. I mean, I hadn't ruled out the possibility that it was really a ghost, right? There's no reason that, like, really a ghost couldn't be a thing in this game.
Sure, yeah.
Sure.
And, maybe, even Constance gets to be, like, a more permanent person on the team. It's, having a ghost spy wouldn't be terrible. But yeah, I had really, like, when everything happened there, and like I had said, when the decision came, and like I had asked everyone to set up because I wasn't going to say who the decision was going to be on. Cathal said he was going to be the last one up. I'm like, all right, it's Cathal's call here. Cathal's call. And when that came down, like, I honestly was ready to go either direction there, and there was actually, more than 2 choices. Yeah. There was, because, like, Cathal knew that he could save one of them with what he had on him, and I was prepared for either one to be saved, and Rowan could save the one that didn't get saved down there, but that would have meant that...
Right, everybody else.
Right, exactly. Building the vaccine would not be easy, which, building a vaccine for a
terrible disease. Weird.
Yeah.
Luckily, you were able to use the new hRNA, honey RNA technology.
That's perfect.
To rapidly produce a vaccine faster than had been done before in the past.
To the point that the weasels thought we were immune, which was great.
Yeah, exactly. And so, there was that. There was a bunch of things that could have gone on. If you do save them both, maybe you go back in and try to find more of that stuff. If you don't get the vaccine developed, like, there's probably a bunch of more weasel fighting on the West Edge during this year than there currently was.
Yeah.
Right? So I had a lot of stuff ready to go depending on what happened. And also, like, the general direction of the game goes a little differently if Constance is still around and Duffy is not. like we'd have a lot of stuff going on down in Appleloft because, his family estate now had no heir.
Yeah.
So a lot would be going on down there. And so, it would be interesting. Someone else would be promoted to like the lead of the training and stuff. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that could have happened on that axis there.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I was really curious about was just sort of like the political climate you were building, right? Like you definitely had these different faction leaders, but for the most part, it didn't feel like any of them above Lana was really angling to grasp for power, right?
And so I had mentioned a little early on, and I mean, I think in the very first games, I was like, there's going to be like a chart. You're going to earn like influence points with them. They're going to give you different perks and stuff. And it just got a little too like video gamey. Right? It would make more sense in a video game where you can replay it 3-4 times. Like, this time we're going to go get Lular to be the head of the guard after she retires, right? Like, it kind of just got out of hand. And so I had never really, like, the 3 people that were vying for leadership all genuinely thought that they wanted to be the leader and felt that they had, like, kind of the best idea. But none of them really disliked any of the other 2. And it was all just a matter of priorities, right? Morgan got put in charge, and so we were now doing a lot of economic themed stuff, right? If Lular gets in charge, we'd be pushing the borders out more. And if Santiago got put on board, we would be effectively trying to, I don't know, franchise might not be the right word, but like... officialize and franchise the Mouse Guard throughout the other cities to be like this actual official reporting source. And so, there'd be positives and negatives associated with that as well. So,
right.
It occurred to me kind of early on that Cinder probably would have also been in that race if he weren't a guy. So that was interesting, just having him like be completely out of the running purely because of his gender.
Well, and he was very intentionally chosen to be that, and it was going to get into at some point that the leader of the Ravens was intended to always be male to ensure that they were effectively never in the chain of, the vice president and then the Speaker of the House takes over kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, the idea would be that the Raven should never be, quote, politically in charge, right? They're supposed to be this side thing. And a couple times I'd been working on another quasi flashback episode about the development of the Ravens, and it was tough for me, and it especially got a little tricky given the real world political climate around a lot of things. Of me trying to make effectively a situation where, quote, the right way to do things never really panned out, and it was like justified to use kind of this like black ops team.
Right.
And I could never really come up with something that didn't feel a little squishy to me in any way. And it really kind of got, as we got more and more down that road, it was just like, oh boy, this is probably not something that I need to be playing up, that like, hey, maybe the secret cops are the good guys kind of thing. And so that's why they were kind of getting diminished, and why it was going to be, breaking up and splintering a bit there. It really got me, one thing that really got me thinking, I don't know if anyone here is big fans of The Shield.
Have not watched it, but do know the title.
Yeah. It's a TV show about like, I think they're LA, but it's some Southern California city police group. And there's this like special strike force that is, beyond the rules. And they're like obviously corrupt, but they, quote, do a lot of good as well. And one thing that the show really got into, especially in the later seasons, is that the ends don't justify the means. And they ended up winning some special award because I forget exactly what. There's some like super mega gang leader that's going to do some super horrible thing, and they capture one of his lieutenants, and they're like, tell us what's going to happen. He's like, nope. And so they torture the guy.
Ooh.
And the guy gives them bad information that they go act on.
Ooh.
And so like the thing that the super bad guy was going to do happens anyway, and they go do something even worse. And they had worked with, I'm going to get this wrong, so you can look up the specifics yourself, but they worked with some international organization on that episode, and it was like to show, it was supposed to be like, there's a lot of this like torture is justified in some of these extreme situations, and first you're still like destroying another human, and secondly, it's no guarantee that you're even going to get good results out of it.
Torture does not work, statistically speaking. People will tell you anything when you're breaking their fingers with a bat.
One of the most fascinating stories about interrogation I ever read was actually about an interrogator who was so good at their job and never used torture that, like, literally maintained friendships.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whoa.
With the people that they interrogated.
Yeah, I know the guy
after,
you're talking
after that.
about.
Yeah.
Sharf.
And I think that was it.
Hans Sharf.
Like, literally appealed with empathy, shared interest, and literally got people to talk that way.
Yeah. So yeah, me trying to like be like, here's the good reason that they're around. I was just like, let's just not worry about that.
Kudos, Dylan. I love the thought that you put into those kind of ethical conundrums, and I love that show flipped this script on it to the point where I'm actually going to go look that up, because there's so many shows that kind of pull that angle where it's sort of this pro-authoritarian propaganda, right? Not to get too deep into it. And the fact that they actually go into what the experts know to be true in terms of it not being effective, not the way to go. I love that they took that. They actually went ahead with that degree of realism. That's neat.
Now,
I like that.
And now on the other axis, because they were also trying to be, do a lot of that kind of stuff, there's a major subplot about his son has autism, and those dastardly vaccination companies won't pay out to help his kid. So, while it was considered kind of this, like, perhaps correct hot topic at the time, it is really borne out to be completely false.
Yeah.
All right, well,
get your vaccines, folks. It's really important.
Yeah, vaccines are good.
If you're interested, Hans Scharf, actually, after World War II, when obviously he was on the other side, came to the United States and basically created their interrogation policy. And then when he got bored of that, he became a world-renowned mosaic artisan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
he's done a lot of mosaics all over the United States, including inside Cinderella Castle at Walt Disney World in Florida.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
This is like Von Braun level stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because, not trying to say a guy was a good guy, just didn't torture. So, it's not a high bar, people.
Well, I mean, he wasn't really a bad guy.
Anyway.
No, you could say the regime is evil. Of course it was, but individuals aren't necessarily. I mean, you can't blame your average guy on the street necessarily.
Sometimes I do.
Well, okay, fair enough.
I think we're going to skip over the rest of this one.
Yeah, interesting chap. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, but still, technique-wise, didn't torture, didn't make sense.
Yeah,
and so I dig that. But yeah, I'm looking. The one thing I think I'm going to be saddest about, I mean, because obviously I love the game, I love Cledwin. I've got all these aspirational skills written down at 0, just waiting for checks.
Well, what's the top one that you have no checks on?
So he had both stonemasonry and carpentry with no checks.
All right.
He had 2 checks in.
You've got stonemasonry at 2 now.
Woo!
Nice.
I love it. All that experience on the island with the knowledge sharing, cultural attaché business. I love it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's it.
And then I was going to study up on, I think I had apiarist and scientist over the winter were my things I wanted to get into. Because it's hard to teach me new tricks.
I was going to break apiary open now that it was no longer story important that nobody had apiary.
Nice.
And I think I mentioned this in our first game, because apiary is, kind of a $10 word.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's A and is at the start of the alphabetical, skill list or whatever, the first mouse guard game I played, everyone made their characters together except for me, because I was kind of coming in late. And as I was coming through, I'm like, oh, apiary, that's amazing. I'm going to take apiary. And it was just like kind of this big groan because everybody took a level of apiary because it's kind of this unique sounding thing. And so that's like, that'll be something cool that only my character does. We deal with bees. There's like, yes, you deal with bees. We all deal with bees. Like, I'm sure if it was like zebra bee enthusiast instead of apiarius, like no one would take it. But yeah, that's I think it was the Rising Sun was the group that was the weird countersigns that Cahill was getting in the last few games we played. That was Lena's crew. And that whole thing was like, using the heather fire to burn away the others and put the borders out was the Rising Sun.
Wow. So literally a fire so bright you could see it over the horizon. That's what their symbol was.
Morning Sun. It was Morning Sun, I think was the name of them. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what was going on there.
The sun that rises in the west.
That's the normal one. The normal one rises in the west.
No. No. But the heather's to the west.
Did you have any concrete plans about having us meet back up with Catrice at some point down the line?
I mean, that was up to Catrice / Audrey. The door was always open, so if she ever wanted to, if she didn't, every few episodes when you were, whenever you get back into Lockhaven, I'd always planned on her like having reports filed in. That would have personal notes that might be interesting to each of you. Cal, what were your long-term plans with your like big empire of breweries and such?
Well, ultimately to retire from the messy and dirty business of adventuring and just and become a gentle mouse of means. Really, it was just to set up initially a brewery chain, but then off the side of that, probably move into regional delicacies. And perhaps use my wiles to also provide kind of mercenary protection on the roads for the various shipments going back and forth. Play both sides of the coin, as it were.
So you've got booze, tapas, and mercenaries.
Yes,
are the three main arms of your organization.
I mean, you look at any European culture from the 18th century onwards, and it's basically in there: booze, tapas, and mercenaries.
Wow, actually, he's right. I think
there's method to my madness.
Talking of gentle mice of means, I think it is important to state that Lord Orlando had no duplicitous bones in his body. You're always so suspicious of him, and I played him up like that.
Well, I have spies in his household.
Yes, exactly. He's incredibly wealthy. He wants to help. He wants his name on things.
That's hilarious.
Right?
That's
so
great.
and I mean, and he would like to grow his wealth as well. So like he would do anything to help a mouse that he could, but if there was a way that he could also make a buck on top of it or get his name out there, why not?
Yeah,
right?
¿Por qué no los dos?
Yeah, exactly. He was never trying to do anything too evil or, certainly nothing any evil or really devious. He always told you exactly what he wanted to do and what he thought he was going to get out of it, but also what he thought would help everyone else. So
that's hilarious. Oh, man. Who else?
Any other questions about stuff? Oh, Catrice's dad was going to join the council down there.
Which dad?
The one, I've got it in my, in my notes. Yeah, Will had really kind of put that out there, and so I'd make sure that I'd take a note out of that one of them was going to run and join the council.
Nice.
And then we were probably going to, do some more stuff in Waterstone, try to get those mice kind of into the future a little bit, and that's where your technological information exchange can help a lot. Was it Waterstone?
Yeah.
But big long-term project was probably going to be to try to make some kind of aquifer pipeline, something like that. Some kind of major engineering project that can move water to other areas that need it out of Waterstone.
We didn't exploit that as much as we should have.
Well, I mean, like, they definitely changed, like, the situation down there, but yeah, we didn't get back there to visit as much, mainly because it was so off the beaten path, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole point.
Yeah, literally.
Everyone just kind of forgot about it.
I did think about Waterstone when you were telling us about the fox fight up in the Isles, because like we managed to drive Sworna off, but we had an army of wild mice to do it, and up there, there wouldn't be many of us. We have ferrets, and they're bigger, but
the Ebon Islands was going to be two foxes working together, but you were also going to have a bunch of ferret pals in there as well. So, and the Black Hacks, of course. Oh, I guess you had the Black Hacks the last fox fight too, didn't you?
As it turns out, kinda. I mean, that's what the stories say.
That's right.
I'll tell you a secret though. The Black Axe's axe wasn't as big as I thought, and there were two of them.
Two tiny black hatchets.
Oh, that was beautiful.
That was still one of my favorite complete turds that I was not expecting for you to like tell everyone that Catrice was the Black Axe. And I mean, to be completely honest, like this game, I have like some big plot things and stuff that I'm trying to move around. I try not to be too railroady, but like from like the first, like I guess storyline, like I was constantly surprised by what was coming out of everyone as players. The owl that you had to run off at the very beginning.
Run off with a wall of stink.
Yeah, kind of my plan was like, I am going to make these dummies camp out, scared out of their mind under the cart all night long, and they're going to be exhausted when they go to try to roll out the stuff at the scent border, and then when the snake attacks, they're just going to be like completely wrecked by this thing. And instead, it's just like, well, what if I open up the barrel? I'm like, oh no, what if they open up the barrel? I'm like, I can't imagine the owl would be on board for that.
Anti-predator sting. We've got a whole barrel of it.
But then, we got, and it just added so much stuff with like, now there's that crew out at Eastgate that perpetually thinks that you guys just smell awful.
Well, we did.
Oh no, it's these
awful.
guys.
Oh yeah.
It's these guys again.
Trout Squad. Oh yeah, they're the stinky ones, right?
Yeah.
The smell of
one of my favorite moments of the whole campaign was when Cal's old crew robbed the Drupe.
Oh, dude.
And we were studiously oblivious.
What's going on? Nothing.
Like, we always managed to be in exactly the wrong place at the wrong time. So we didn't see anything.
Yeah, that was super fun. I like because that was something that I like the first chunk of things. Basically, when I really started to get everything together, I knew the first thing I really had fleshed out was up to the Appleloft history lesson episodes, where it was revealed that we're going to have the flashback, and then it was going to be revealed that give you all different characters. Of course, like I said, stolen from my buddy Eric, to give everyone different characters. He just did that recently in a game I'm playing with him.
Nice.
Flashback to a different thing, and then reveal that one of the characters that you're playing was Duffy, was like my big kind of like stroke of genius for what the big storyline was. Introduce the weasels, introduce that Honey's missing, introduce Meister stolen, introduce Chris, get all this stuff rolling here. But kind of the next major part was like, okay, I want to get the ferrets, I want to get them up to the Ebon Islands at some point. And so when I put everything together there, I'm just like, I need to make this to keep getting constantly more complicated for them during that time up there. And I had put together that while all this was going on, someone was going to rob the hotel. And I knew, like, we all knew, and Cathal knew, that he was somewhat associated with the criminal element up there, so I'm like, this will be a little awkward. but like he so immediately leaned into it so hard. and this is one of another one of these incredible things. I'm like, you find something in your pocket that's a symbol of your crew. What is it? And immediately you're like, oh, it's two nails bent around each other to be CC for me and my sister. And I'm just like, dear God, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's
so good.
I was pleased with that one. That was quite quick. Yeah.
And so I was just like, okay, well, now, they're not just going to rob the hotel. Cal's going to have to help them rob the hotel for some reason.
Yeah, there's no way out of that. Yeah, that was hugely fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many Derricks were there in the end?
Yeah, I was just going to say, with the assorted Derricks.
So many Derricks!
Dude, I was going to have an unknown number of Derricks on the ship during the sailing up, and at one point you were going to have to figure out exactly, there was going to be like a Derrick logic puzzle. You'd have to determine how many Derricks in total there were, what each of their skills were, what like shifts they were on, because there was going to be like a rogue Derrick, and you're going to have to like finally put, it was going to be this like big mind puzzle with, well, this Derrick is on the first shift but doesn't eat breakfast. Oh, okay, so that means
Love it.
Oh man,
beautiful.
Yeah,
yes.
One of the things that was really fun for me was getting to play as Lana, and at the end of it, I was like, man, should I have really been that ruthless with that character? Because if you guys recall, in the last moment, like Lana had positioned herself in a way to
kill Dania.
Oh yeah, you were absolutely about to stab me.
Like it was literally moments away from happening. Like there were several times my mouth was open to say it because like that's how close it had come. Only for that to literally have been the tone. Like, how much of that was the way we drove it, and how much of that enmity was going to be there all the time, Dylan?
I mean, I had some very basic stuff, but the level of it really came out of what happened there, right? A lot of Lena and Dania came out of the way that you all played that,
right?
And hilariously, like, I don't think I have ever played Dania. It's always been someone else.
I think you're right.
It was Gabby when we did the Get Dania Out of Jail episodes, and the bonus Dania episode where she hooked up with the Badger.
The Badgers.
Yes.
Yeah, the Badger.
The Badgers, who are mice.
Yes. The Badgers, yeah. And so that was always Gabby, and then it was Holly at the in the original game, and I had talked about that, and that was the game. That was the first time that we missed Yoan, and Yoan tended to miss a lot of our Halloween stuff.
Yeah,
which was kind of okay because it's the not as relevant things, but Yoan's character that he was going to have was going to be a medic because again I was giving everyone a character that was as much as possible cross purposes from the way that they like to play their current character.
Hence turning Dan into an assassin.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I turn Dan into an assassin. I turn Holly into a medic. I turn Audrey into a frontline troop that has to make big, bold decisions, big, brave decisions and stuff. And I turn Yoan into a medic. And everyone had a big decision in that game, and I think we've talked about this a little bit. Dania had a choice to like just go all in on weasels, and if she had, we wouldn't have the Dania in prison situation and stuff. She would have ran off with the weasels and been, almost like it's the Tasha Yar Romulan situation, right? She would have been this like. This mouse that had joined the other side that had always, that would be taunting you on that side instead of someone who's kind of this ally that really wants their freedom.
Right.
And that's the other thing with Lena is you had a choice there where you could have just been completely on your own and she would have been this completely independent factor instead of fully integrated into the mouse guard.
Right.
And then I had, since Yoan wasn't making it, I did not get the nail on the head on theirs, but it was going to be at some point you were going to find effectively weasel medics that were gravely injured. And were you going to save these weasel medics or not?
Ooh.
And that was going to play into something about how, like, what's the head of Mouse Medical's name, Holly?
Devin,
yeah. That was going to play into something that was going to come into play with Devin down the road as well.
Well, I think you could safely say I would have helped them, because then I could have some kind of weasel capital for further adventures.
Sure. but exactly. Everyone had like the big choice, and that was the same thing with Audrey had the choice to like stand and fight or run for help when the weasel was in the orphanage.
Yeah.
And that was going to impact a bit about how Duffy's post-injury life went.
Right.
Quick note, I can see my mother-in-law wandering across the garden, so there'll be some noise in just a second as the front door opens.
Okay. It's exciting. I think we might be coming up on the end here. Unless anyone has any other questions or comments, I do want to thank everyone who listened. We know that it's always disappointing when your favorite show ends, or even your second favorite show, or whatever. Wherever we rank it, a show.
A show you
of all the podcasts you listen to, this was one of them.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been so much fun.
Yeah, this wrap up has been hugely satisfying. It was
indeed
getting the whole story of the trip up north was really the thing that I was kind of regretting that we didn't get to do, but we kind of did. We just fast forwarded it.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to thank the Ryan Side that did all our initial art. I want to thank SJ Tucker, who gives us our theme song.
Yes,
and, at the very least, most of all, we got to thank David Peterson for making Mouse Guard.
Yeah,
he's really cool.
Who's also just a really great guy in general in person.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah. I think most or all of us, maybe not Ewan, has had a chance to meet him at assorted Comic Cons and such.
Yeah, no, I haven't, I don't believe.
Yeah, so,
nice fella.
Yeah, he's a cool dude in general, so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well.
And thanks.
Thanks to Dylan.
Of course, thanks to Dylan.
Thank you, Dylan. Exactly.
Yeah,
running this whole thing and having all the crazy ideas.
Indeed.
Yeah, this whole thing started because I wanted two things. I was like, I should make a podcast, and I wanted to play Mouse Guard with my friends at some point, so I just slammed them together and made it happen.
And also Bear Force 1.
Yeah.
Bear Force 1!
Yeah, so that whole thing has been in my mind ever since the first time I played the board game Scythe, and one of the units is one of the armies like rides around on bears, and when I was doing that, I was just like, well, this one's the leader, so they must be Bear Force 1, and it just we then didn't play the game for 10 minutes. I rolled on the floor laughing about my own joke again. So.
That's great.
So I was like, at some point I have to get Bear Force 1 into something. And then when I was throwing this together, I'm just like, oh, I know what's going to happen now.
Well, I think you mentioned a couple of times when we were talking about the size chart of various enemies we could fight. Like it came up kind of naturally, and maybe you shoehorned it in and I didn't notice. But you mentioned a couple of times that like bears would be the biggest things we'd ever face.
Yep.
So the seed was planted.
A bear would be the biggest thing you'd ever hypothetically face. I don't know. You were never that you were never that heavy on it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm always, and I mean, like when you would occasionally say things about like, I think multiple people, and almost always joking, said something about like, well, maybe Chris was the Black Axe's friend, and Chris doesn't remember anything. Maybe Chris is the Black Axe. And I was just like, yeah, could be. Who knows? Maybe I'm the Black Axe.
No, that's beautiful. Hey, and also for the listeners out there who are still, doing art and stuff based on that, keep tagging us. Like, we love seeing that stuff, man.
Yeah,
it's the best.
So thank you for all of that over the
Someone please draw Cahill in his cabin boy uniform.
Oh, come on. Yeah,
that's gotta happen.
Please. You'll make me so happy.
Yeah.
No, that would be lovely.
All right. Well, and so I just want to close out with thanks to all my players and thanks to all our listeners. And to completely rip off Stephen Dubner, take care of yourself, and if you can, someone else too.
Indeed. Well said.
Yeah. Nice one.
I cannot leave the cages locked or well enough alone. I can only be myself when I am so far from home.
Thank you for listening to the Mouse Guard RPG podcast, What You Fight For. Holly V. Begg plays Rowan. Audrey Brandt plays Catrice. Dan Brandt plays Cledwyn. Yoan Sanders plays Cahill. And I'm Dylan Exobyte Mayo, your GM. Our theme music is Wonders by S.J. Tucker. Find more of her pixie pirate myth punk folk rock at music.sjtucker.com. Our logo and art is by Ryan Sy. Check out his page at RIANSYGH.com. That's RyanSy.com. The Mouse Guard RPG is by Luke Crane and David Peterson. The Mouse Guard comics are by David Peterson. Find out more about the Mouse Guard comics and the RPG at mouseguard.net.
I'll take up this quest, just say the word. Even though I am small and I have no sword, a party at the end is not required. And I promise I'll keep trying.